And welcome everybody to Destructive Behavior Podcast with me, your co-host. With your host, Brian O'Hare. Good evening. Oh man, where do I get started? Tonight's show, the pandemic that keeps on giving. Who here is done just dealing with everything that is COVID-19? Because I know I am. So we're going to talk about some stuff related to that tonight. As well as some of the things that's been going on with me for the past week or so. First, I'd like to just take a moment and apologize for not having an episode last week. This show really is about taking what goes on daily with me and putting it out there for everybody to see. And I was absolutely in no state of mind to do an episode last week. And that had everything to do with depression, my anxiety, and just feeling some kind of way over some minuscule comment that just sent me in a spiral for no reason. And I absolutely should have done an episode last Monday just so I can try to express that. But I decided not to because I wanted to make sure what I said was right. And I wanted to make sure that I could express myself in a manner in which we could all take it as a learning lesson and apply that in the future. I have been in a ridiculous, depressive slump, just a huge funk. And anybody that deals with depression or PTSD or anxiety absolutely knows what I'm talking about. It's just those days where you don't care about anything, like, at all. Like, I didn't care about the gym, which is a huge part of my life. I didn't care about this podcast. I didn't care about anything. I forced myself to come to the gym every day, and I was only here for an hour or two, maybe. I was in such a negative state of mind that I didn't want to be around the people that absolutely support me the most. And that's the KM Voice family, right? We all succeed together and we fail together. And we haven't failed yet. Our company is growing. We keep getting more podcasts to come in, and we're doing some really cool work. Unfortunately, it's not unfortunately. I'm glad none of them really understand what I go through every day. And the unfortunate part is that I'm not really great at expressing how I'm feeling to them so that they can really understand, besides, oh my God, Brian's throwing a hissy fit again. And it's the truth, because sometimes that's exactly how it comes out, a hissy fit. And it sucks, because that's not what it is. There's so much more to it, and that's how it looks to everybody. And that's a lot of different people. And I feel like if you've gone through what I've gone through, or what you've gone through, you understand that frustration / embarrassment / whatever, etc., that you feel when you can't express yourself. So I want to apologize, because I really feel like I still could have done my episode last Monday, but at the same time I'm not sorry, because I don't feel I could have put out a product to everybody that would have benefited anyone. Like, you'd have been like, oh, yup, he has problems too, and you know this, I've told you. So today we're really going to talk about the pandemic that keeps giving. We're going to cover a sleep study, or not a sleep study as much as a study of a few people's sleep stuff that happened in Quebec. A doctor put something out the other day, a study that she did in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine. We're going to talk about that and see if any of you guys are facing the same thing. I know I kind of hit a couple of these points as well. And then we're really going to dive into last week, and I'm going to give the example of what happened. I'm going to give, the silly things that went on in my head, knowing that it wasn't what the case was. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about maybe what we're going to do in the next few weeks. Again, if you look back on previous episodes, you can get the numbers to the different abuse line for the national abuse hotline, if you will. And then the suicide awareness and suicide hotline as well from the last week's couple of episodes. Those are huge, and I'm going to have those posted again on my page here. That way we can get that information out to everybody. So tonight's going to be a fun show. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break now. That way I can kind of have more time covering up these next couple of topics, and then we'll probably take a break after that and finish out the show. So we'll see you in a few minutes.
Need to spice up your website? Grab some attention on your Facebook page? Need an intro outro for your YouTube channel? KM Voice will do it all. Pump up your profits and add some video advertising on your channel. Add some fire to your marketing campaign. Do you want to advertise on the radio and want a professional to handle your audio? Well, guess what? We do that too. From writing the script to producing the finished product, we take the pain out of advertising. Need to add voice to your company's training video? Yep, leave it to us. Send us a message on Facebook at KM Voice or give us a call at 440-213-2860. That's 440-213-2860. Production doesn't have to be a hassle. We give you the best because you deserve the best. Send us a message or call now.
Welcome back to Destructive Behavior Podcast with me, your host, Brian O'Hare. So, this pandemic, COVID-19, is absolutely crazy. It has driven people crazy more than just crazy. We could get into all the political things that have come from what I believe is just people being pent up and going crazy as much as anything. But what I really want to talk about is people that are having trouble sleeping, that have PTSD. Research was published a couple weeks ago in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine that suggests this pandemic can trigger a reemergence of traumatic dreams. What's that mean? This study took, I want to say it was 20 people, and it showed that of these people, they started having a reoccurrence of their traumatic nightmares, going back to the trauma itself, not just some like, oh my goodness, let some here and there, like it was every night kind of deal. Madhulika Gupta, the author of the study, shared that her patients described sleep disturbances and suggest that the provocation of PTSD symptoms would increase during the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, I don't know why anybody would doubt this, because it's kind of an obvious thing, at least to me, when you start adding in anxiety and depression and being cooped up in one place and not really being able to control anywhere you go during this time. There's limited everything, right? I can't go to a restaurant and eat somewhere. I can't go to my local bar if I want to and have a beer to relax and just kind of de-escalate or just decompress from the day. There isn't that time that people typically have between work and home on their drive, whether it's a 5-minute drive down the road or it's an hour drive. People aren't able to really work through and get rid of all that stuff and leave work at work and leave home at home. So the idea that PTSD symptoms could increase or come back is absolutely something that should be in the forefront of mental health providers' ideas or their minds. Now, mind you, again, I would like to make this known once again. I am not a doctor. I am not a counselor or anything else. I am just a guy that has taken what he's gone through and his experiences and kind of giving you ideas on what he's done that has and has not worked. So please don't take anything that I say as something that you should try. I'm just saying maybe it might work for you. It worked for me, right? But if you deal with PTSD, me saying to you that this pandemic might increase your symptoms, that shouldn't come as a surprise, because it hits you really hard. So, reports were collected from the first 20 non-urgent calls between March 25th through April 8th. And these are from patients with a primary PTSD diagnosis. Now think about that window. March 25th through April 8th. That's what? A week and a half? Less than that? So keep that in mind. All of these patients had scores of 20 or below on the checklist, or on the PTSD checklist for the DSM-5. So that's when you go in and talk to your primary care person, they ask you a few questions. Do you feel suicidal? Have you thought about suicide in the last few times? Have you thought about hurting anybody? Are you happy? Questions like this, right? All of their scores were below the 20 for at least 6 months to a year, which put them in, classified them as in remission, if you will, if you can have remission from PTSD. But basically their symptoms were like very almost asymptomatic. This sample of 20 people included 3 men and 17 women between the ages of 25 to 64 with no known COVID-19 diagnosis. So they weren't worried more so than anybody else about the COVID-19. They weren't actively engaged in taking medications or worried about having it or anything like that. 4 of these people worked in healthcare providers in long-term facilities. 4 were police or Army veterans. So these reports revealed a couple of cool things. Significant sleep disturbances. 50% or 55% of those patients expressed recent trouble falling asleep. Excuse me. And 70% reported waking up several times a night, sometimes resulting from troubling dreams. Okay, so let's talk about the first people, the 55% of people trouble falling asleep. I think that's something that with stress happens, right? Especially if you have PTSD. You start, that anxiety builds, and that anxiety doesn't always let you fall asleep well. Once you get to sleep, though, that's a good thing, right? And then you're good throughout the night. Well, of that number, 70% of these people were waking up resulting from troubling dreams. So it's like, well, what kind of dreams were they? Was it just a bad dream or what? Well, 56% of those people expressed that the dreams involved trauma that was deeply buried or very upsetting. An example involved childhood sexual abuse. Post-trauma was not obviously connected to COVID-19, right? So the study is saying that, okay, hey, it's taking their past trauma and it's reliving it. It's bringing it back. But it's not connected to COVID-19, right? Which is why they said earlier that none of these patients had a diagnosis of having COVID-19. So it's coming down to what is going on around us that is really affecting how our mental state is. It's everything that, it goes back to the not being able to go to work, being around your children all day, which is not bad until you don't have a choice, right? And it's not part of your routine. And I say that, and God, I hope you guys don't think that I don't want to be around my children. But when you start adding that stress of having to quote unquote entertain your children while you're working, I think that does add a layer of stress to somebody's life that they weren't necessarily dealing with prior to the pandemic, which, if you have PTSD, could absolutely throw you into a spiral. Dr. Wapa said the only common theme that was involved by identified by patients between their past traumas and COVID-19 experience was a feeling of not being in control. So, okay, that makes sense, right? What have we really felt like we're in control of since the pandemic started? I mean, all you can really control is what you eat, if you can find meat at a store now, or in the beginning, what kind of toilet paper you used, because God knows a week and a half ago, I had to go to a store and I came back with a box that looked like printer paper that was full of toilet paper. And I don't get to control that. That took me straight back to the toilet paper I used in Iraq and Afghanistan. It wasn't fun. So not having control of your life really can absolutely add stress, right? It's the anxiety of, oh my God, what happens if this, that, and the other? I can't do this and I can't do that. Simply going out and getting away from the house isn't really an option, because where are you going to go to get away from the house? The grocery store. At the grocery store, you have to stand 6 feet away from people. You can't just walk to the aisle that you know where some milk is. You have to follow these arrows on the ground now. And then when you're in the checkout line, which to me isn't a bad thing, you have to stand 6 feet away from somebody. Okay, cool. I don't really like people standing right up behind me anyways, because I don't want to smell their breath. But it's being told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it that really takes that control away. And with these traumas coming back in nightmares and not having control anymore, when you go from remission for 6 months to a year to all of a sudden it feels like I don't have, like I'm at square one, like that would just absolutely almost break me. It could very well almost break me. So 8 of these 16 patients were taking, forgive me for my pronunciation here, but prazosin before the COVID-19 to treat nightmares. 2 of those people were working in healthcare and upped their dosages 2 milligrams, which reduced the vigor of the nightmares. Those patients noted, had they not been able to manage their nightmares with medication, they would have experienced a full relapse in their PTSD. That is saying a lot. I don't know what remission feels like from my PTSD, so I can't speak too much on that because mine's never really given me that opportunity. But I know that if my symptoms kicked back up to where I wasn't feeling in control and I felt like I was back at square one, I would feel helpless and scared. So let's talk about why might these patients be experiencing this spike or this relapse. Can anxiety spike something subconsciously? I absolutely think it can. And it goes back to kind of everything that I've talked about here tonight. That anxiety of really not being able to control where you go or control what you do. Constantly hearing the negativity that is the media today, that you never get a break from it. It's, oh my God, today's the next highest day in COVID-19, and it's just, it grinds on you and it grinds on you and it grinds on you. And that's something that those, what I call demons, really prey on, right? They prey for the weak moments. And when your anxiety is that high, what happens subconsciously? I mean, it attacks in the sleep, right? And then boom, now your PTSD is kicking you while you're down, literally. The sleepfoundation.org states that some things you can do to kind of get away from, or at least maybe help slim your chances during this time, is adding exercise, steering clear of stressful activities before bed, and putting to-dos on paper. Okay, so of these 3 things that the sleepfoundation.org says we should do to get better sleep, let's talk about adding exercise. Okay, adding exercise is cool, except the gyms are just now getting open in some states, and in some states they're still not open. Right? So, okay, so that leaves exercise at home. Well, who gets motivated to work out at home? There's plenty of them. There's plenty of you out there that get, motivated to work out at home. And then there's just some of you that go to a gym because that is your motivation. That's your way to get away and say, okay, I'm going to the gym in order to work out. Because if I stay home, I'm not going to work out. And I'm going to sit on my couch and I'm going to do 12-ounce curls with my pop. So, again, that is something that adds to the anxiety because you can't really control when the gyms are going to open. Steering clear of stressful activities before bed. Okay, that's good in theory, except in a pandemic, somebody with PTSD could literally view their whole day up until bed as a stressful activity. Let's take the person that works from home and is a single mother or a single father for that matter. I'm being dad or mom. I'm working. I'm trying to entertain my child during the day while being productive at work. And then I have to cook dinner. I need to sleep or I need to exercise because that will help, right? But then my kid doesn't want to let me work out, or my workout isn't good because my child wants to play while we work out, and that's good, but like it doesn't allow you to get a good workout in. So then you're like, oh my God, I just need to go to bed. And you go to bed stressed out. And putting to-dos on paper. Okay, so make to-do lists. Who likes those? Not me. But in a way, it absolutely makes sense because that allows us to make a checklist and cross things off so that we can view ourselves as being productive throughout the day, right? That's great until you realize that your to-do list is really controlled by what you can do and where you can go. So it all comes kind of back around full circle during this pandemic and really doesn't allow you to do what you want to do. So what can we do during the pandemic to kind of try and get stress to walk away or at least relieve some of it? Well, we can find things to do at home outside to exercise. Go for a walk, ride your bike with your kids, take the dog for a walk as a family. Things like that are decent exercise, and get you out and get you active. It might not be the rigorous exercise that we're looking for, but it's exercise nonetheless. And maybe if you need to do something to, escape the stressful activities, maybe it's the bath time for your kids, right? Take a long bath, take a long shower, something along those lines to kind of just let your body relax before you go to bed. And then with the to-dos is look at it as not necessarily something I have to get done today, but as something that you can see progression being made. And hopefully that can keep you out of this category of having your nightmares come back. So, with all that being said, let's jump into this last week for me. I feel absolutely foolish, as I should, because it was ridiculous. So the conversation started off with my producer, Tyler. He and I were discussing a new show that our production company had. And we were also discussing just getting more viewers for my podcast, the Destructive Behavior Podcast. And the fact that the podcast I do is not fun, right? It's not fun. It's not. No one wants to sit here and discuss depression and anxiety and what's going on. And he's absolutely right. Like, I knew that coming into this whole thing was this podcast isn't something fun, but it's something that needs to be said. And it is difficult to find sponsors because finding a sponsor for somebody like this is a specific group of people that watch this. Like, unless you're dealing with depression and this, that, and the other, you don't really go out and look for a podcast like this. Well, instead of just taking that conversation as what it was, a conversation to be had, me being in a depressed state already, my mind just wrapped around the fact that Tyler said, this isn't a fun podcast. That doesn't mean that my producer Tyler is like, screw you, I don't want to do this podcast. It means that this isn't a podcast that everybody looks for. And he's right. And it's absolute truth. But what happens is my mind took that statement and wrapped it into a package of, see, you're worthless. No one wants to hear you. Why are you even doing this? Your producer doesn't want to do it. And this, that, and the other. Which is absolutely not true at all. Tyler has been one of the biggest supporters of this podcast since the inception of the idea. So it gets frustrating knowing the truth and yet having to work through that, right? How do we take a conversation like that hits so hard, knowing that our friends and family aren't saying anything negative, but our mind takes it into that negative realm. So that's something I worked on last week, was being able to listen without taking everything into a negative manner, because that's huge for us. It's huge to understand that it's okay, one, for somebody to make a statement that doesn't agree with what we have to say, or states the obvious that, hey, look, what you're doing isn't what everybody is talking about. It's not what everyone wants to talk about at all. But it is something that needs to be said, because someone out here that will watch this might need to hear this message. When I get into a depressed state, I don't know if you're like this or not, but maybe you are. I feel like everything is against me. It's me against the world. And it's never just that. It's me against my friends. It's me against my family. It's they don't like me. It's this, that, and the other. It's I'm worthless to them. I'm trying to prove something to someone, and it never is good enough. When that's obviously not the truth. If that were the case, there would have never been an episode 1. Period. It can be frustrating. It can be upsetting. But most of the time for me, it's embarrassing. Because I can know the whole time in my mind that this isn't what the real story is. It's not what's really going on. Unfortunately, I have to fight against my brain in order to really prove that to myself. And when that happens, I become a really negative person. So what happens then? Then I shut the doors to everything and anything, because I don't want to bring negative energy to everybody else when we have such amazing things going on with our company. Or at the gym, and then I lose all the gains that I made, right? Because it's like, screw it. You're not good enough anyways. That's not the case, right? A few of my episodes have over 1,000 views on them. One or two of them are close to 2,000 views. And almost all of my episodes have 300 through views. So that means 300 people are watching this absolutely not fun podcast all the way through, and hopefully it's helping them. Well, it took me a whole week to really get out of that funk, and I'm really still not all the way out of it. But why? Why is that? Why? What's the question? Why does it happen? Right? Why do I feel like when I have a conversation with people I care about, people who are my friends, my business partners, that I feel like I'm being targeted? There's absolutely no reason for it. None whatsoever. Yet here I am in my mind defending myself against myself because someone said, and my depression or anxiety takes it and twists it and manipulates it into a statement that was like, hey, by the way, you suck. And that wasn't what was said. And then I get upset. And I don't want to talk to Tyler or Keith because, like, I don't want it to sound like, oh my God, Brian's sounding like Brian's throwing a pity party. Because it's not the case. Like, I just don't know how to work through it. And I can't just bring that up to them because they don't quite understand that it's nothing against them. It's my brain doing what my brain does, and it's frustrating, upsetting, and embarrassing to me. And then it's like, why can't I get this idea out of my head? I know the truth. I know what the conversation was. I know nothing negative was meant by it. Yet I can't stop feeling that kind of way. And I know you guys have experienced this. I know you have. If you have dealt with depression or anxiety, period, you have had a conversation with somebody you care about, or one of your friends, and you go, well, he or she is like, fuck you. And that's not the case at all. And then you have to talk yourself out of it, or worse, you don't talk yourself out of it, and you lose a friendship or somebody that supports you. It's never people that we don't really know because we're just like, it's whatever with them. It's always coming from somebody that cares about us, that we kind of look at and say, man, why aren't they being more supportive right now? But that's not the case at all, especially when it's dealing with facts. Like, it takes a special person to do this podcast. It's not a podcast that is fun and outgoing. I'm gonna have a fun podcast one day. I told Tyler this. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna have a fun podcast, and people are gonna be like, "What the hell just happened?" Right? But it's talking about these issues. The fact that me and Tyler had a simple conversation, and all of a sudden I was feeling some kind of way when there was nothing meant by it. There was absolutely nothing behind it. Zero. And yet I felt some kind of way. And let's take it back to the pandemic. Maybe that's adding more stress on me than I really care to think that it is. That, hey, maybe that I'm doing all of this stuff, like exercising every day, 2 to 3, like I'm exercising 2 to 3 hours a day, training, right? I do my best to steer clear of stressful activities before bed, except for this last week when my whole day was a stressful activity because I was trying to talk myself out of how I was feeling, and then putting to-dos together. Like, I make a to-do list all the time, and I check a couple boxes off every day. I'm a productive person. So, what is it? What's underlying that I'm just not catching? And, like, that's the frustrating part, because we just don't know. Like, how is it that this beats us every single day? Or maybe it doesn't beat us. Maybe it just challenges us so much that we think it beats us. Right? Like, Tyler has no mean bone or negative bone in his body. Like, I don't think Tyler could be mean to somebody if you tortured him to. He states facts. Nothing is done with personal anything. As far as, like, I don't like you, your podcast sucks. That's not how he works. Yet for some ungodly reason, that's how my brain took it. And it sucks when your support group, when the people that you're with every day then become the people that you feel are against you. And it's trying to jump out of that mind state that just, it beats us up every day. And I don't have an answer to how to do it or how to get rid of it. This isn't an episode where I hand you something that's like, here you go. This is what I tried and it worked. I don't know what the hell happened. I know that I talk to myself. Right? That sounds funny. I worked through feelings every day. with the common thread of, I know this person didn't mean this. And each day it lessened. And it sucks because the people you want to be around the most, you're afraid to be around because you think or you feel that they feel you're not worthy, even though that's not the truth. And that's how this dark cloud that is depression really works, right? It's that one little seed that gets planted in your head because you think something that's not really there. And that seed blossoms and it just covers you in this dark cloud as you try to kick and scream and break your way through, when you know that all the other person wants is to see you succeed, because your success does nothing but give them success and bring them happiness from seeing you succeed. That's what our support groups want, is us to succeed, is us to better ourselves every single day and to beat our depression, our PTSD, our anxiety, all of that. Unfortunately, sometimes our depression and anxiety use those people against us. And it's not any of their doing. It's nothing they say or do. It's thoughts. And all you can do is continuously tell yourself that that's not the truth. And repeat to yourself that this is the truth. This person wants to see me succeed. They want to be there for me. And it can be difficult. So I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a last break. And then we'll get back in a couple of minutes and we'll talk about what's up in the next few weeks. So with that being said, I'll see you in a few minutes.
Need to spice up your website? Grab some attention on your Facebook page? Need an intro outro for your YouTube channel? KM Voice will do it all. Pump up your profits and add some video advertising on your channel. Add some fire to your marketing campaign. Do you want to advertise on the radio and want a professional to handle your audio? Well, guess what? We do that too. From writing the script to producing the finished product, we take the pain out of advertising. Need to add voice to your company's training video? Yep, leave it to us. Send us a message on Facebook at KM Voice or give us a call at 440-213-2860. That's 440-213-2860. Production doesn't have to be a hassle. We give you the best because you deserve the best. Send us a message or call now.
And welcome back to the Destructive Behavior Podcast with me, your host, Brian O'Hare. I always want to say with my co-host, but then it's like, who am I going to co-host with? Like my inner thoughts? Like, it could be an interesting show. I don't know. So, just in recap of what we talked about today, or what I talked about today, relapsing when it comes to PTSD is a very real thing. And it isn't just one thing that affects us in life when it comes to our mental health. It is everything around us that does absolutely affect everything going on in our lives, in our mental health. So we need to keep that in mind, is that the healthier we live and the more positive that we live, then the better chance we have of getting past or getting through everything. And that can be difficult. It can be really difficult. The most positive people in the world have moments of doubt. And it's one of those things where, how do we go about this? How do we continue to stay positive in times that don't really feel very positive at all? How do we not allow the negativity to creep in and just consume us? And those are all things that really we can talk about all day, but it comes down to you and how you're going to allow it to affect your life. And it sucks saying that because I wish I had an answer, but there is no one answer. I wish there was a cookie cutter answer, like take this and you'll be all right in the morning. Like in the military, it's funny. When you got injured, a lot of times you got Motrin. The injury depending on the injury, depended on how much Motrin you were given. But it's like, oh, you got a headache? Here's some Motrin. Oh, you stubbed your toe? Here's some Motrin. You broke your leg? Here's some Motrin. Lost a head, got cut off? Here's some Motrin. Talk to me in the morning. And that was an ongoing joke, right? But that's kind of how PTSD and depression and anxiety are. There's no real answer for it, so we kind of throw the book at it. And whatever works for you best is what you should grab a hold of and go with. For me, taking a step back before I don't know, respond to somebody that I know didn't have any ill thoughts or ill meaning behind it is what I do. I step back so I don't say something stupid or do something stupid. And God knows I've messed that up too lately. But in order to get my thoughts right, and that's the big thing, is knowing when we have to step back and say, okay, this isn't really what's going on. What is really going on? And then proceeding to find an answer. And that can be daunting and downright terrifying at first, because you're trying to talk sense into yourself. And man, that's difficult, especially when you know yourself really well, because it's like, okay, let's talk. But this is something else, and this is something else. And there's always a reason why this was said and this wasn't said. And it can take some time. But it's better to have that argument trying to decipher the truth in your own head than lash out at somebody who cares and does want to see you succeed. I could have easily told Tyler to screw off and just been like, I'm done with the company last week. It would have been rash and stupid, but I could have. But instead, I chose to step back and say, you know damn well that Tyler doesn't mean anything negative by this. Now let's think about why in God's name you're thinking like this, instead of saying, hey, you know what, Tyler, I'm done. Get out of my life. I don't need any of you anymore. Because that's the absolute opposite of the truth. My business partners, my producer, Tyler, and Keith Migra are two of my biggest supporters right now. And that is a reason why I had to step away last week, because I couldn't have given you guys the product that you deserved in the podcast, and it wouldn't have helped our business, our production company, by just sitting here and being like, you know what, this just happened. Now let's talk about it and throwing a hissy fit on a podcast. Instead, I chose to take a step back for a week, really decipher what was going on, and then hopefully using it as a way to help some people learn, using a situation that wasn't really positive for me in that moment, due to my thoughts. So I challenge you this week to really think about, or if you find yourself in that moment where somebody says something and you think that they mean it in a negative way, or you take it as such, and really step back before you respond to them and say, hey, did they mean it this way, or did I just take it this way? And if I took it this way, why did I take it this way? And really step back before you go and make a rash decision like, I don't want to ever speak to you again. Because sometimes the people that say the truest things don't mean anything negative by it. They're just stating facts. And they're not always bad facts. They're the truth. And if somebody is willing to give you the truth up front, that's someone that you want in your life. Because you know that no matter what you're going through, you're going to get the truth from them. And that's why I value Tyler in my life. Because I know that he's never going to tell me something that isn't true. And if I don't like that, well, that's not Tyler's problem. It doesn't have anything to do with him. And I'm just using Tyler over and over and over tonight because it's the freshest thing in my mind, right? But just because somebody says something to you doesn't mean that it's negative or that they hate you or that they think you're worthless. It's just they're making a statement, and they're allowed to make a statement. So we shouldn't overreact to just a statement, right? Because being a friend really does mean being honest with people. Now, Tyler meant, it is what it is. But, if somebody tells you that you're effing stupid, that's a different story. Then what the hell are you talking about, right? But if it's somebody giving you advice or just in a typical conversation, don't necessarily think that they're aimed at you, right? Take that comment that they made, chew on it for a minute. Be like, it tastes salty, but is it the truth? Sometimes that truth is hard to swallow, but sometimes that truth is exactly what we need in order to move on. So in the next couple of weeks, right now, my next guest for next week is up in the air. His story is remarkable, and I really hope that he decides to come on and talk about it. He gave me a call last week, or a text message last week, and said, hey, I'm ready for people to hear my story. I talked to him tonight, and he's kind of in there, so I'll know this week if he's going to talk. If not, I'll find something else to talk about. And then I've got another friend of mine that I met through another podcast that might want to talk about her domestic abuse scenario. I want to give you guys just a little bit more understanding that there are a lot of women out there that know exactly what you're going through. So with that being said, thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you guys next Monday. Have a great night.